Hey, everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are rounding out a great month that we've dedicated to this theme of ecosystem, sponsored by Grand Sky. And today, not only are we rounding out this month, we're also rounding out a 4-part series sponsored by TruWeather Solutions, which was their TruWeather Partner Series. And so when you think of ecosystems, what better way to end this month than with Don Berchoff, who is CEO and founder of TruWeather Solutions, because he's been creating ecosystems all over the place when it comes to advanced air mobility and drones. And then his guest today, and our guest, of course, is Ken Stewart from NUAIR. So great to have you both on the show.
Thanks for having us, Dawn.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So everybody, just a reminder, we are live. So we got two amazing folks here. Fire your questions, give them positive encouragement. Tell us where you're from. All right. So let's go around the horn real quick with intros first. And I think everybody knows Don. So we're going to start with Ken, and then we'll go back to Don. So Ken, over to you first. Give us your 30-second elevator bio pitch.
Sure. So Ken Stewart, CEO here at NUAIR. NUAIR is a nonprofit based in New York focused on economic development. I've been here to be 4 years, December the 4th. So coming up on an anniversary. Prior to that, led a lot of the UTM development for GE Aviation, their venture group. The company was called Aeros, which unfortunately went away with COVID. Prior to that, spent about 27 years in telecommunications, working in venture capital private equity companies.
Amazing. Well, great to have you on the show finally. We were talking before we dialed in and to all of you. And we were saying we've been swimming in the same circles for years and never actually met. And here we are meeting virtually kind of for the first time. But Don, everybody knows you, but of course, please, for those like two people out there watching that don't know you, go ahead and give them a little bit about your background.
Hey, Dawn. So I'm Don Berchoff. I'm the CEO of TruWeather Solutions. TruWeather was, we started up in 2015 to unlock the power of science and technology, weather science and technology, trapped in labs and universities that was not making its way out into commercial systems. We focus on the low altitude. We focus on the drone and air taxi industry, autonomous vehicles, electrified vehicles, because we know that those vehicles are going to be weather sensitive. We know the current weather system that we have is not been built for this. And we know that there's gaps that have to be filled. So we're filling those gaps. We bring sensors all the way to decision solutions. And, we've really been around now for 9 years. We started in upstate New York, actually working with NUAIR and working with the Genius program. And so we are a Genius team. And we work very closely with upstate New York. And the ecosystem piece, as you're talking about, weather is and should be part of the integral part of that ecosystem. When we talk about UTMs and we talk about detect and avoid and we talk about communications, we got to get weather in the same conversation, because weather is going to be the long pole in the tent. We're starting to see it right now. And we need to get it built in to our thinking about resiliency and BV loss, because that's where it's going to start mattering.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody out there, this guy, he started journaling weather when he was 7 years old, by the way. I know this because he was on our Full Tilt Tech Industry Leadership Talks podcast about a year and a half ago. Look at this. Oh my goodness gracious. So look, if you want to know about his background, his incredible story, please go back and watch that on demand. Great stuff. Not only that, when you think about ecosystems, like I said, Don's been creating them all over the country, very much involved in the Dallas Key site. We were just together in that Fort Worth area about a week or so. It's all a blur, about a week or so ago with the GUTMA, Global UTM Association Harmonized Skies event. Don actually in Metis Technologies sponsored a live stream from there. He did a keynote, really great stuff. But at 100%, I was windy there when we were out there watching those live demos. And so weather is no joke when it comes to emerging aviation technologies. But let's talk about NUAIR and kind of what you guys are doing together. So Don, on this journey with your company, you started in the New York area. That's where you're from originally. So it makes sense that you would migrate back to places you call home. But tell us a little bit about the work you all do together, and maybe I'll ask Ken that question, because first, Ken, let's do this. Tell us exactly what NUAIR does, because I think we've all heard about NUAIR.
Sure.
But what exactly, as a nonprofit, do you all do?
Yeah, so 12 years ago, NUAIR was put together when Congress set up to award 6 test sites at that time, 6 UAS test sites, designated FAA test sites. And so NUAIR was put together, put a bid in. New York got the award. At the 11th hour, the FAA determined that these need to be public entities and not private entities. So we worked with Oneida County. The award for the test site went to Oneida County, where Griffiths Air Force Base used to be. And so for 10 years, we essentially managed and operated the test site on behalf of Oneida County. In 2021, we submitted a grant to the state to talk about expanding beyond just testing like we do for the FAA, but really start looking at advanced air mobility and how do we move civil operations forward. One of the challenges of a test site is under the PAO operations, those data sets can't be used for civil operation validation. So by moving to Syracuse International, and recreating our waiver from PAO to civil, all the data that we capture with our partners coming here for verification, validation, and testing can now use that data for their civil ASTM standards or civil waivers, certifications, things like that. So focus very much on the civil side, but also kind of a dual use facility. We also do a lot of work for DoD. One of the things that's unique about Syracuse International Airport is it's one of the only airports in the country where military drones take off using commercial infrastructure. So it's a commercial airport. So now we have civil drones, military drones, and commercial airports commercial airlines operating there.
I was smiling because I work quite a bit with the Syracuse National Guard, who flies the large, Group 4 drones out of there. In fact, Brian Laurie, Blast from the Past, was one of the initial JAGs that was with me at Vandenberg Air Force Base. He was their head lawyer. When I retired, he was a colonel, advising them on the drone stuff. So what a small world it is. And so then tying in TruWeather to this ecosystem that you created out at the Syracuse airport, what's the connection there?
Sure. So when we moved to the airport, we went out and kind of redid all of our waivers. We now have 240 square miles of BB lots that actually incorporates the airport itself, but the entire range to the east of about 40 miles out and quite a bit north and south. And so if you're familiar with the upstate New York area, we always say we have 2 seasons, the 4th of July and winter. But it's got 4 good seasons, but winter is very harsh up here. We get about 127 inches of snow on average. And so weather is really important for us. And, if we've got people operating at the far end of our operational area, we have our ops center monitoring the weather real time, just in the event that something comes into that space while they're operating. A great example that we'll see some of this week is lake effect snow. There'll be a small band, probably 3 miles wide, that might dump 6 inches, an hour on a certain region. If you're out flying in that area, you don't see that coming. But using Don's technology, TruWeather technology, we can actually see that occurring on the lake, notify any of our pilots. And we fly year round. So weather is extremely important for our operations.
Well, and that's a great segue then to kick it over to Don, because, you and I have talked at length about the sensor network. You're creating to blanket the nation. You blanketed this area up there in upstate New York. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like, Don. What kind of sensors you're putting out there, and why it's so important for that unique environment.
Yeah, well, so I wouldn't say we blanketed the sensors up there. I would say that we've gotten very good at using the data that's available. There's a New York State Mesonet is up in New York. I'm wearing my patch from my squadron that I actually activated in 1998. And we used to support my group, 180 people. We used to support actually Griffiths and Syracuse because of the UAVs. So I have a really good familiarization of New York, not just from living there and going to school there, and it has the best mesoscale network in the world in New York State. So we leverage that. We leverage sensors that they have put in around the ops center. Our goal is to get more sensors out through that airspace. The key is to get data above ground level. You know, most people think of weather, they think, oh, we need surface data. No, we don't. We need more data above the tree level. We need to know what the winds are doing at 80 meters or, you know, 250 feet. We need to know what the cloud ceilings are doing. We need to know what the visibility is, because away from airports, away from Syracuse, it's microclimate. It could be good weather at Syracuse, like Ken was saying. It could be no ceiling. It could be no visibility problems. And just a mile or two north, you might have a snow squall. And sometimes those snow squalls don't show up on weather radar. Most people think weather radar is a magic tool. It's not. Weather radar, it's all based on how far from the radar you are. And the curvature of the earth means that if you have a low snow squall coming off the Great Lakes that's below 5,000 feet, you may not see it on the radar. Just like sometimes when it's precipitating and you see it on the radar, it may not be hitting the ground. And these are the things that we need these low altitude sensors for, to detect this, to keep people flying. Keep in mind that safety is important and risk is important, risk management. But if we have better comprehensive low altitude weather data, we reduce the uncertainty. And what does that mean? Uncertainty is what costs money. It costs revenue. It cost avoidance we're going after. And what we're saying is that if you get better measurements that we can bring in our system and get back to you, you're going to have more certainty. With more certainty, you might fly when you think you can't fly. You might be using a METAR that's not relevant to where you are, and you're grounding yourself. We're seeing this all the time. I've had 5 or 10 conversations literally in the last 2 weeks about this. People are being grounded when they want to fly. I was on the phone this morning in Ireland and in France. People are realizing it now, Dawn. It's starting to happen. And, you know, we're in a good position to help people. We don't have a miracle, but we know how to get the most out of what everyone has and how we can fill that gap.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And like you said, Don, it depends on where you are. Every place, whether you're in France or Ireland or in near Syracuse, New York, it's going to be very fact specific as to what that weather is going to be. And even in that environment, it's going to be constantly changing with climate change and some of the challenges we've been seeing lately. And I want to kind of bring it back to Ken and talk a little bit about, you know, the partners you've gathered. You know, I think we have a really cool picture of your ribbon cutting there at the Syracuse headquarters. So here we go. You know, focus, like you said, commercial, but also on the defense side. You know, Don's talking here about, you know, bringing more sensors to the table. Can you share a little bit about some of the companies that are there and some of the needs they have that would be relevant to this kind of weather sensor network that that Don is trying to kind of seam together for your area there?
Sure. I'll talk about some of our alliance partners first, then I'll talk about kind of how we serve the market with those partners. And obviously Don's organization is part of the alliance partners. So we have 2 different USS providers, One Sky and Aloft. They both serve kind of different markets. Those are peered. We have Resilience, who provides us service assurance across all of our networks. So we have multiple radars, multiple sensors. We have drone detection for counter UAS systems. All of that's monitored real time for health assurance and operational readiness. We've got, I said, Aloft, already mentioned. Hidden Level is also our drone identification and detection capability in and around the airport. So there's a whole sensor network that we have to monitor that we manage on behalf of our clients. And so that's kind of our alliance partnership. And what we do with that technology is we work with multiple agencies across the state, whether it be the Thruway Association. We're wrapping up a phase 1 SMART grant with them to show the value of doing signage, retaining wall, bridge inspection. And so with that program, we've been able to show that they can scale doing supplemental drone inspections of these assets and save roughly $32 million every 2 years. And we extrapolate that out to the DOT, which has 17,000 bridges. It's almost $600 million every 2 years. And so this is the ROI that we develop and how we work with our state agencies, whether it be law enforcement, DOT, Power Authority, Port Authority. New York's got a lot of authorities. The city, we work with multiple agencies. And so that's really our goal, is to get them to adopting these technologies in really soup to nuts. We come and we help them Part 107. We do their NIST certification from 0 to 5. And so now all of our agencies that have programs are all demanding that their pilots are level 3. We do their SMS systems. We've done over 300 COAs and waivers for state agencies. So that's the value that we're bringing, really developing all of those systems. And so these are the early stages. A lot of this stuff is VLOS, right? They're doing things visual line of sight. But as we continue to expand our network, so the network we have in and around Syracuse will continue to expand beyond the region. They'll start adopting more higher advanced type operations of using drone in a box solutions to be able to go look at high voltage wires, using drone in a box solutions to do signage inspection and those things. So we see this continuum continue to grow. And as we develop that network, obviously the weather sensors are part and parcel to that system as we expand it across the state.
Awesome. Awesome. So Don, back over to you. As you're kind of watching this ecosystem grow out there, what's your plan in terms of getting some more sensors out there? In other words, leveraging the alliance, going to the state, local governments, all the above, because you and I have talked about this and you've said this multiple times publicly, this is not a 100% public issue, right? This is going to have to be public-private partnerships along the way. The government is not going to fund these sensors, right? So, there we go. Don's sharing a screen, I think.
Well, let me just say that I thought I'd do this, Dawn. We're trying something new today. We haven't done this before, right? So this is Syracuse right here. And this is the current sensors that are available in that area. That these are just normal sensors.
Hey, Don, hold on. You're making my producer work double time in the background here. Let's try to get this scene up if we can, because I think you, me, and Ken can see it, what you're talking about, but I don't know that our audience can right now. So while Mike's troubleshooting that in the background, and before we kind of get into the sensors, why don't we focus first on kind of like what is the way that you plan to encourage people to invest in this, in other words, and who are the partners you're looking for this network?
Right. So this is a journey. TruWeather believes very strongly that once folks see the value of low altitude weather data, and everyone understands the weather tax, and the weather tax is the price Mother Nature imposes upon your business, both real or perceived, or what you think is going to happen. So a place like Syracuse in the wintertime has a higher weather tax than in the summertime because the weather's different. But
Right.
the point is of that weather tax, about 30% recoverable. And that's what we're going after. It's the uncertainty that causes them to cancel when they could fly, or to run into, sending people out to a location to try to fly and they can't. And that's what we're going after. So the way you fix that problem is by getting sensors out to get better measurements. And
I think we're going to pop this up now. We can.
Okay.
Give us one. There we go. Mike, yay. All right. I think everybody.
Mike,
Mike,
I did that to Mike. I'm sorry. I did that to Mike. I'm sorry. I was being a little
I think
excited
everybody
here
can
today
see your
because I've been on
screen
this
now and
today.
not any of our heads, which is fine because they've seen enough of our heads. But tell them what they're looking at here, Don.
All right. Well, this is our V360. All right. Well, this is our V360. This is our workbook user interface that we have. Now, all these products that you're seeing here today are all available by API, and there's even more power behind them. But what I'm showing you here is the forecast out of this location that comes out every hour. You can color code these to meet your requirements. And, earlier Ken was talking about the weather is going to get worse, and you can see the red. Red's bad, right? So that's what's going to come in later. So that's what's going to come in later. But, right now they can fly. The max winds, forecast to be 15 knots. Our current weather says it's about 12 knots. But we can also look at the observations in the area. So here's the airport here, and this is the airport observation that's saying, we got a ceiling of 20,000 feet. The winds are 250 right now at 12 knots. A little breezy, but not flyable. These are weather stations that are available through the Mesonet and other areas. Now, what I want to show is that I'm going to go to Washington Warren Airport down in North Carolina. And this example here, Washington Warren has invested in weather sensors. If you look at this airport right now, you can see there's very little weather data around that area, right? This is their METAR, but we have our own sensors that we put in around there. And so now they could show up on our interface for our end users. And so this is the lower cost temperature sensor that we have, which is not very expensive, but it's up on a tower so we can get the winds aloft. But more importantly, they invested in a wind LiDAR. Now the wind LiDAR is really significant because the wind LiDAR allows us to see the winds at 10 levels up to 1,000 feet constantly. So right now you're seeing the winds at the surface are about 6 knots. But as you go up in height, you could see, oh, it's not too bad. They're not increasing with height. This morning they were around 18 knots. But what this does is it tells you what the winds are doing. This can really cover about a 20 or 30 mile area around it or more to give you a really good understanding of what those winds are doing. Generally speaking, if you don't have this, you're depending on a forecast model, right? And that goes back to, when we went with Syracuse, it just goes back to that, that mission cast that we were showing earlier and demonstrating that this is a forecast now, not real data. And so you don't know what you don't know about what's happening, at that altitude or that layer, right? So that's what, that's what we're trying to do here at TruWeather. The more people who provide traffic camera data, the better it's going to be, because it's just going to increase the possibilities of getting more data, right?
That was an awesome impromptu demo right there. So very cool. And I want to bring it back to New York and to NUAIR specifically. Can you guys have an ops center? And I think we have an image of that. So let's pop that up. And then, Don, you're talking about integration, all of these sensors. I'm going to throw it out to either one of you really. How does that work in terms of the ops center and integrating this weather data in that really tough environment?
Well, I'll take it first, Ken. So Ken right now has this interface in his ops center. Right now he has what I just showed you. So they use that in their ops center to make their weather decisions. But we could do a deeper integration. So the APIs these products that you've seen us more, these are APIs that we can then integrate into a loft system or into OneSky or into any other command control system that Ken's using. And that data can then be brought and integrated on top of their other screens. So you can have it full, single pane of glass. And more importantly, in the future, if say Ken wanted to develop analytics, say he wanted to do automatic routing of aircraft, and he had that available, we could feed this weather data into that system, and that will take the information about weather as a risk and allow him to set up his pre-flight planning and his automatic routing around those areas, just like he would say to stay away from a ground risk or stay away out of an area he's not supposed to be flying in. We can add weather as that single layer. So you can have it through this workbook, which he's using today. You can add more sensors. This whole screen could be full of sensors if we had the sensors in there. You can integrate it as an API into your command control systems or your UTM systems as a layer, or you can actually take the data and make it part of your analytics and your machine learning to help reroute aircraft in your planning process as you're doing your deconfliction, right? So why deconflict for something and then find out, I can't fly there due to weather? Why not have the weather piece already in there, then ask for that location to deconflict?
Awesome. Ken, over to you on your thoughts.
Yeah, so, we do a lot of flights here. Like in 2023, we did 2,600 flights across the year. So we fly a high volume of flights up here. And so, we're now going through this near-term approval process with the FAA to essentially provide this infrastructure for the safety of flight. And coming out of that, we will have live clients using that infrastructure. And so that's where what Don starts talking about gets really important. One of the routes we work on is almost a 40-mile route from a hospital to one of their cancer centers. And, you say, well, it's only 40 miles, but like where I live, I'm 25 miles south of Syracuse. And I look at Don's platform before I go in the office. I had 8 inches of snow the other day. Syracuse had 0. So that's how these little microclimates are all throughout kind of the Finger Lake region up here. And so it's really important to understand how that weather is going to impact. And so as we start developing these services, we see a lot of savings for the hospitals as real-time deliveries when they have to send out if you think about the way hospitals and pharmaceuticals work today, they send their trucks out in the morning to do these deliverables. And so as soon as those trucks leave, they're getting urgent calls for these things coming in one at a time. And so we've got to integrate like chain of custody, signature authority. All these applications have to be embedded into the entire process. But we've got a great partner in Upstate University Hospital that we're working with. And so this 40-mile delivery process is going to be the first thing we look at. They've got to continue to have the backup of an automobile or some other way of doing this, because we do have the issue of weather up here. And so, we have the right kind of UASs that can fly year round, but there's still weather up here that you're going to ground those aircraft.
Hey, Ken, I'm going to ask you a question. You guys are operating out of Syracuse International, and not officially part of that test site. As you said, there were 6 of them. They were congressionally approved, if you will, or authorized, I think is the right word. And then there was the IPP and the Beyond program. I did some of my own research on there. Very weird, the authority for some of that.
Sure.
But in any event, you're out there at Syracuse now. How would you characterize what you're doing? In other words, we've got this thing in Texas. They're calling themselves an operational evaluation.
Sure. Yep.
We've absolutely got pockets of activity across the United States that are not affiliated with a test site. Look, by the way, Mark Ganung is out there at the Nevada test site. One of our super fans saying hello this morning and happy Thanksgiving. Hey, Mark, we love you. And I hate labels, but what would you actually call what you're doing there?
Yeah, that's been our dilemma, is how do we put ourselves in this new category? And we've been talking about this for months, but I think we see ourselves as really economic development for the state. We partnered with Genius New York, which Don was a cohort with. We try to bring those companies that kind of come through that program into our alliance. And we always say, we don't pick winners and losers, but we don't pick losers. So we always, kind of go through, we vet the companies, and try to integrate and really move things forward. For example, last October of 2023, we had the interworking group up here the interworking agency up here for 4 days. And when I first called them, when they passed the American Leadership Act in advanced air mobility, I called and said, you need to come to Syracuse. And they're like, why would we ever come to Syracuse? Well,
and this is the FAA you're referring to?
It's DOT. It's 22
DOT,
federal agencies.
okay.
Yeah, it's 22 federal agencies in total. So Department of Energy, DOT, FAA, NASA, a bunch of different agriculture. They all came up here, and it was the 4th stop of 4 stops. And at the end of it, they said, we should have come here first. They're like, we went to aircraft manufacturing locations and we learned about the aircraft. And goes, but the thing that we do, and I think this is what really differentiates NUAIR, is we focus on economic outcomes. Everything we do, we put together an economic package back to our clients so they can walk into their management and say, this is the value we're bringing back to this organization. So in a way, we've taken a very entrepreneurial, almost kind of approach to this, to say everything's based on a business case. And we presented the grant to the state when we said, hey, we want to propose this grant to you. We asked for $28 million. They gave us 21. And we said, look, from this, over the next 4 years, you will get a $250 million return on investment. We're 18 months in, we're already at $40 million. And we've already shown them a path. And we told them there'd be a path to 1.3 billion at the end of 10 years. We think we can actually get the state there in 5 to 6 years.
Wow.
So, in my world, coming from venture capital, private equity, somebody gives you $1 million, you give them a 10x return. And that's really been our focus. And we do the same with all of our clients. So we have companies like AVSS, another Genius New York cohort that does parachutes for drones. And I
met the CEO up in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago. Yeah,
Josh, fantastic guy. So they want to get, their product out there and integrated to drones so people can sell drones to do ops over people. So we've done, I think, 12. We're on a path to 16 that we validated to ASTM certifications for them. So we help them with that business case that allows them to go scale those operations. And everything we focus on is scalable, repeatable operations. So we don't use, with our waiver, it doesn't require visual observers. So as we start coming out of NTAP and we start growing the business here, people that come in and do deliveries don't have the cost of putting visual observers and daisy chain them. So when you see these companies that are doing commercial deliveries, it costs them $40 for the $3.99 they're getting. And so we have a very focused space on economics. In fact, we had a contract in the Middle East we were on for a year doing their technology and regulatory strategy for advanced air mobility. We're now working in the UK. We're working in Oceania. So we have, what we're doing here is starting to really spread its wings to other areas around the globe. So it's a very unique place that we've created here. And I think that's, I don't have a name for it, so I'm not good with labels either, you know.
Well, it's interesting, and the other thing I'll say to that, Ken, is, ROI is not always point A to point B, and it's not always dollars and cents either, because I know public safety is one of those key markets that both you and Don are focused on. I mean, heck, everybody is, right? Because when you think about drones and the value they bring to society, I mean, other than, like you said, delivering, medicines to cancer patients, I mean, ripping my heart out here. When you think about public safety and saving lives and, those eyes on scene, or whether it's a, crime scene or crash site reconstruction mapping effort that can save hours and hours of backlog on, or a highway being shut down, as an example.
Yeah. So all those have
all
economic.
of those things.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, like, I want to talk to you and Don both about this, what you're doing to enhance public safety operations in your area. I'll go with you, Ken, first, and then Don.
Okay. So, we work closely with the Department of Homeland Security's here in New York State, so the local state group, and we provide training. We've provided training to over 3,000 law enforcement agencies for Part 107. We also train them.
And is that also with the NIST as well, that advanced kind of certs you were talking about?
Yes, we do the NIST certification as well. We also do that with our TruWeather, DOT, and our other partners. But we also actually work with the police agencies to talk about the value of their program. So, if you think about like accident recreation, today they use transit stations, which are these laser tools they can measure and they take photographs. It takes about 2 to 2.5 hours. Well, if we close the throughway is going to hit a $411 a minute of economic impact every minute that's closed. Well, 2.5 hours for a transit station or 20 minutes with a drone. Do the math. When I was with GE, we did that for Washington State. Every Washington State trooper got a drone in their trunk. So we also take that. We look at, like, I think we've just done the most detailed study on bridge inspections, talking about the lack of requiring lane closures. And every time you close lanes, there's cars that back up. And so New York State has a $36 billion congestion problem. And people think, well, that's New York City. New York City is only $3 billion of it. The main corridor across the state is I-90 going east and west. It connects to the Mass Turnpike, goes all the way to Boston, and it runs north and south up through Albany all the way to Canada. That's our main commerce area. And so working with the Thruway, that's where we did that work to say, without having to close lanes of traffic, doing supplemental bridge inspections with drones, you eliminate all that carbon emissions. You eliminate crashes, because every time you close lanes of traffic, we all know there are accidents. And New York is interesting because when you look at the cost of a life, and they've got the economics on that, most other states say it's 11 to 12 million. The state of New York is 13 million. So every time we can avoid lane closures and accidents, we reduce that number, saving people's lives, but there's a number associated with that number, with that as well. And so those are the things that we come up and we give that whole report back to that agency. So we train them, we give them a safety management system, and we have a pretty good reputation of credibility. We want to make sure that the people we train are efficient and safe with what they're doing. So we develop their safety management systems for them, their reporting, all of those components. So it's really, a full spectrum that we provide them. And we use the dollars that the state gave us through Empire State Development to ensure that those agencies are getting those operations up and performing it safely. Awesome.
And Don, I know you've been deeply involved in working with drone responders and talking to public safety about, especially as a lot of these agencies move to DFR, drone as first responder, launching things off of rooftops and more autonomously into the future. Tell us that plug-in for TruWeather and the role you play in public safety in general, and then also there in the New York area.
Well, first, there was so many things I could have dovetailed off of what Ken was saying. First of all, I want to tell you a story. Yesterday, I hear these every day now, every day. There was a medical drone delivery test going on yesterday in Spain, and they were going to do 12 flights, and the hospital was going to pass blood. And the first 2 flights went off. The third flight got canceled. The pilot was looking at apps They had they were confused. The winds were stronger. People came on the roof. They're going, oh, it's too windy. And they canceled the flight without having any real data. The blood went bad. The blood went bad. All right. So I'm just using that. That is one example. And that bag of blood, I don't know what a bag of blood costs, but I'm sure it's lots of money. You could have had a weather sensor for the same price as that a bag of blood, right? And they were talking about a hill that was in the way of the range, right, where they had to fly. If they had a sensor up there, they would have flown, no doubt in my mind. So here's the thing. This is what's getting lost every day. Nobody really understands the amount of money that we waste because of weather uncertainty. We just accept it. It's the cost of doing business, right, Dawn? But let me tell you, the reason why we were able to fly with uncertain weather data and undetectable weather data with helicopters is because the human was on the aircraft. They were the last line of defense. They were the sensor. They were held accountable. They said, you will have knowledge of the weather you're flying in, and we're going to trust you to make good risk-based decisions. If you kill yourself, that's on you, but don't kill anybody on the ground. Well, now guess what? The pilot's off the aircraft, but our sensing system hasn't improved. So now we've lost the best weather sensor we've ever had. So now this uncertainty starts coming into play. So all the things that Ken's talking about, anytime weather gets into play here, it's going to cause uncertainty. And that uncertainty costs money. So right now we're seeing 30 to 40% weather cancellations for drone delivery. Shouldn't be that high. The reason it's that high is the uncertainty, not because the weather. The weather doesn't happen all the time. So what I'm saying is that whether it's money or it's mission readiness or mission execution, and I saw this in the military. I was brought in on a lot of major military operations to make sure that weather's being used right, and we understood if we were going to see our target or not. And we made sure that we hit that target, and sometimes we had a delay, sometimes we had to change the type of aircraft. Keep in mind that payloads that they're using on these aircraft, whether they're optical, thermal, they get impacted by weather. And even if a drone could fly, it doesn't mean you're going to get good imaging because it's shaky, right? So right now, this is all not being dealt with other than by some poor sucker or pilot on the ground that's just been told to do this, and then we don't give them the tools to do it properly, and we put it all on them. So that's what we're trying to solve. And the bottom line is that if you have anticipation in your weather strategy, if you're trained properly, and I'm not talking about the Part 107 weather training, which was probably unnecessary, if not, very not well done. It's about knowing how to use weather and the tools you're given to make these decisions in a way that's systematic. There's a process that's going to help you make a better decision. That's half your uncertainty. The other half is getting you data. And I know that if you use our system, which is plugged in the Ken system, you'll get a 4-to-1 return on investment. And I know this sounds crazy, but Ken's talking about return on investment. We're a piece of that return on investment. All this money that's being lost, it's like the logistics supply chain. There's somebody taking loss at every line of that supply chain. If you have the right weather information in that supply chain, you're going to be moving everything a lot more smoothly. Now, it doesn't mean you're always going to be able to work, but we want to make sure when you're not working, you really can't work. And we want to make sure when you can work, you are working. And we want to make sure the two people that have to connect are getting the same information. Because if one person thinks the weather's going to be bad and they don't show up, this person who has our services is going to show up, and guess what? There's nobody there to take it, right? I saw that in the military with air refueling. How many times did a fighter show up to get air refueled off of Maine, and the tanker didn't show up because their weather team in Michigan said you can't fly, and the fighter team coming out of South Carolina said you could fly, and they go up there and there's no tanker, so they have to come home. So
that's a scary thought.
But that happens all the time. And here's the last thing I'll say: weather is very complex. You can't automate all of it. People want to automate everything. This morning in my conversation, I said, look, we'll automate as much as we can, but you got to understand when it's not going to work, and then what you're overriding that you're going to use. And that's why TruWeather has to be a partner, not just a service, not just a plug into an API. We have to be a partner because we can help you look at all your ConOpses. We can help you with your training. We can help you maximize use of this information to get real results, both for mission execution and for business.
Well, and I know you guys have forecasters on call too, because like even as you were showing your live demo there, Don, my head was exploding and I was getting PTSD flashbacks from taking the Part 107 test and some of the weather questions, which I know much to your chagrin, I still will never understand. And that's why you're out there with your team. But look, we're getting short on time and this has been awesome. And obviously public safety is one of many different market sectors that are going to rely on weather as they go to advanced and more autonomous operations moving forward. But I want to talk about, look, we're at the end of 2024. We're at the end of your TruWeather Solutions series on the show, Don. Really appreciate you and Lisa and the whole team. It's been a great year. As you look back on this year and of course, look forward into 2025, what's the one big thing? I'm going off script here, guys. What's the one big thing that you are looking forward to as the new year, as we walk into the new year together? Ken, I'll go with you first.
So for us, it's the near-term approval process because it allows us, the FAA has never previously allowed third-party infrastructure for the safety of flight. And so there's, I think, 4 different companies are now going through the process. So for us, it means that all the infrastructure we put in place, we can now start putting our clients and partners and enabling people to do this. And I think what's unique for this region is we're a neutral host. We don't have the full stack. We don't provide the drones. We just help provide that infrastructure. And then working with our partners, say the Thruway Authority, we're going to use their fiber to start putting sensors up along the I-90, creating broader corridors for shielded operations, start creating a much broader operational area. So for us, getting the NTAP piece through means we now have a commercial offering. And then, from that point, it's about grooming a larger network and just enabling more companies to come here and do what I think this industry has been trying to do since 2016, 2015. Awesome.
And Don, how about for you?
Well, actually, it's the same. We're working on our NTAP around the fixed, the key site, working with DroneUp as our champion operator. We're hoping that the FAA will approve that. That gives us the ability to use the new weather standard that we helped to write in TruWeather.
ASTM 38 weather standard.
That's right. And use that standard and an SLA, a service level agreement, that we can tie to our service, that we could be measured. And that would make us an approved weather service for DroneUp as well as our sensors, even before the Part 108 or the weather advisory circular comes out. So we can start testing what we're saying, give that data back to the FAA. And I want to do the same with Ken. I want to be on their NTAP. We want to do an NTAP for them. And what this will do is it'll allow us to get these sensors out and these capabilities out and be approved under waiver for Part 108 or any BB loss missions that they're flying. And we could close these gaps earlier and be prepared then for, when 108 comes out. And we're also going to be working very much around our test beds. We have 2, scanning wind LiDAR test beds. One's going to be around Fort Worth, and that's for small drone operations. And the one in California around Hollister, which is going to focus on middle mile cargo drone and air taxi. And so we're building these use cases and these test beds to figure out what the weather sensing strategies need to look like, what the ROI is going to be, what the business model is going to be, and how then we could figure out and make it affordable for everyone. Because our goal is to amortize these costs of the infrastructure over lots of operators so that they're only paying for a service. They don't worry about paying for the big infrastructure that everybody's worried about, because the government's not going to pay for it. The federal government is not going to put it out there. So.
Yeah, no, awesome. And by the way, Mark is out there saying, great show. Thanks. I agree. Great show. It's easy to have a great show when you have great guests. So thank you both so much for, I learned a lot today, honestly. In fact, NUAIR, Dave Whitaker from your organization was part of my Law Tech Connect workshop last year. But until really now, I didn't fully appreciate what you guys are doing. So this is really great stuff. Thank you so much. And of course, Don, so awesome to work with you throughout the year. Look forward to a great year together, all of us, and for the whole industry, really, as we go into 2025. So before we close out real quick, I'm going to let Don do this, and then Ken, tell everybody how they can learn more about your companies and organizations and how they can reach you.
Well, you can go to our website at www.trueweathersolutions.com. You can always reach me on LinkedIn. And we look forward to talking with you about the future. We're also going to be taking weather data off of drones very soon. We have the telemetry already hooked up. It'll be real-time telemetry coming off of drones. So we're excited about next year, and we want to help people. Our job is to help you be efficient and be mission effective. And we're standing by.
Awesome. Ken.
Same thing here, website NUAIR, NUAIR.org, not .com. Always here to help. We're good at problem solving. So people out there looking to commercialize, scale their operations, that's what we're good at. Also on LinkedIn, and look forward to, going forward in 2025.
All right.
And I want to thank Ken for, we have a great relationship, and looking forward to winter, because we weather people like weather. So
as I stand in my basement watching the snow come down here in Colorado Springs for a white Thanksgiving. But on that note, for those that celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving to all. We should be thankful all year round. And frankly, I feel so blessed to be able to interview folks like this and learn about the industry as a student and get to help tell these stories. So thank you, everybody out there, also for watching. Have a wonderful holiday, and we will reconvene next week in early December as we kick off a new month called the Best of 2024, sponsored by Leica Geosystems. So we'll see you there. In the meantime, we are out here.